that goes with it. And of course, he argues that historically this has been the concern about usury is excessive interest charge. And I mean, excess usury is just a charge for money, and people can charge outrageous things for lots of goods, including money. This is just an example of that, but it's a really critical one for that. And his argument is that basically we need to find a way to limit interest rates. He comes up with this, and I can't justify how he's come up with this because I don't fully understand his argument there. It's a little indirect of sort of 1%. He then harkens this back to the fact that that's what the ancients said as roughly the limit of interest that should be charged. So anyway, I just raised this question about the legitimacy of debt for purposes for what seem to me to be legitimate purposes, so the need for having a system of borrowing that people need to do for that under whatever system you have, including monetary reform, and then how you address the problem of even under monetary reform, there will still be lending taking place because monetary reform doesn't propose to eliminate private banking. It just makes it lending money that is pre-existent, not creating the money. But again, as long as there is loans being made, if interest is high, you still have that same problem of concentration of wealth through this channel of usury. So my question is, how do we think about that in terms of monetary reform? And I don't know quite how it couples with the parity issue, but to address not only interest that's created as part of money creation, which it should not be, and which we want to eliminate, but interest beyond that.
Right. Yeah. I hope I understand your question. I think I do. My response is simply that there is no, why would somebody borrow money when they can earn it? If it's going to cost more to borrow it than to earn it.
Well, it's a time factor. I mean, that's the point.
I understand.
You
Again,
now.
but as I said earlier, wealth comes first before the money. So if you're trying to circumvent the system and get the money first and then create the wealth, then that needs to be recognized. Charles Walters used to say that if we understood the importance of farm parity in this country, on every farm gate there would be at least 3 human beings with rifles to make sure that every truckload of stuff that left that farm would not leave at less than 100% parity price. Rifles with live ammunition. That's the importance of it. That puts the money into the equation of the entire economic production on the basis of earnings rather than speculation or anticipation.
So is there kind of an analogy there between interest and the agricultural prices? That is to say, should some kind of a 3 rifles there be making sure that people don't charge interest that is excessive?
I think we do that. We have usury laws that sort of
We did it.
that regulate the interest charge on certain things. I don't know if this would. I'll try to do something that I just thought of that's anecdotal to this. It may not be. I thought it was funny when I thought of it. Back in the 80s, I did a lot of debt restructuring, taking the farm's balance sheet and redoing it, and negotiating with the bank, and and doing a lot of stuff, and it was really kind of interesting work. We got into a situation with a little country bank that had piles of money, and he was a real crooked guy. And they were going to have an auction and sell off all the property, and they got permission from the federal court to not not have an auction, but to do it inside the bank privately. Which we had a lawyer and filed a motion saying, the reason they did that was because I was a leader of an anti-credit organization. So when we went to court, we wanted a definition. What is an anti-credit organization? And it came out that I was trying to talk people into not borrowing money that they couldn't pay back. And it posed a threat to this bank. It did. I mean, it posed a threat. It's not about the money for them. It's about the power. That if somebody doesn't pay this artificial debt back, it'll encourage everybody to do it. And they're scared to death of having to forgive a debt that you can't collect. I think to go back to where you were really coming from in the first place is about the imports and exports. I had this terrible argument back in the early 70s with cattlemen's groups who historically are anti-union. They don't have a rationale for being anti-union. They're rabidly anti-union. It's against free enterprise and it's socialism, or it's just all nonsense. So I'm at these meetings and I said, and they were trying to advocate to open up foreign markets. And I said, I think we should be advocating for more unions and higher wages. Oh my God, this is a sin. I said, those are our customers. Do you want to sell stuff to people that don't have any money or people that do have money? Take your pick. A well-organized union has adequate wages to buy our stuff. The guys in Mexico don't. I gave up. I mean, they were still going to be looking for foreign markets with this magic pill and foregoing the domestic market of people that had money to. I said, you want to sell hamburger, you want to sell T-bones? Take your pick. It's not rocket science, but they're still in that same view. In America, how is it everybody in this room that has a vehicle, everybody consumes brake rotors and tires, just as two things. Every car. Why is it that we're importing them from China when we could make them here? Because they're cheaper. What happened to the people that made brake rotors and tires here? What are they doing today? How has that made the economy better? Do you think it made the Chinese better? Maybe. That's not my problem to make the Chinese economy better. Mine should come first. Domestic should be first. If you want to call that nationalism and get that label put on you. Oh, you're against exporting and importing? I am for creating a domestic economy that works for America. That doesn't mean we cheat somebody else. So why is it that we don't advocate to make brake rotors and tires here and not let the Chinese rupture the domestic market? Does that sound like I'm a communist? Seems to me that's how you prevent communism, if you really want to know, to have an economy that functions for everybody.
That's right.
Instead of just a few. So how do we get these ideas that seem to me to be common sense to be part of the political system? I failed with the cattle industry to get them to understand that high wages was a good thing for our business. I totally failed. They absolutely reject that. What do you do? Apparently, as a nation, we have rejected the idea of making brake rotors and tires here because we'd like to get them from China because they're cheaper. But I'm not sure anybody's been asked if they believe that. It's just what's been done. I don't know if there's ever been a referendum on something like that amongst the public.
It's short-term thinking.
Or no thinking at all.
Very short.
My question is either about re-incentivizing American workers to do agricultural work or economic normalization with Mexico. So they did a study a while ago a business, I think it was maybe some kind of fruit company. They were farming this fruit, and they were trying to get American workers to do the farm work.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they even, increased the hourly wage substantially, like $20 an hour or something like that. They couldn't get any Americans to do the work. So they still had to have Mexican farmhands to do the work. So my question for you is, how do we either re-incentivize American workers to do that work? And if that's not possible, then wouldn't we have to have some kind of economic normalization with Mexico in order to, I guess, still work within the framework of a parity program?
Go ahead. That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah, I did hear about this. I know it was in the last couple of months here that I've heard about this. Frankly, my guess is, what I would do if I were the person trying to get folks hired to do the work, I would pay as much as it took to get the work done, and say that that is the threshold cost of mechanizing this labor. And then go around and look for anybody who could try and apply technology to the job needing work.
So wouldn't that affect the parity price then?
No, not necessarily. That could establish the parity price as far as that goes. I mean, the state of the arts of production is an element of the parity calculation. What does it cost to get all this work done? That's really what we're asking as a parity calculation. That, if we can't get it done for this much, what do? It's a free market. Pay as much as it takes to get it done, or don't do it. Maybe it's the wrong stuff to be producing. Maybe we don't want ugly fruit in that quantity. Maybe we don't want strawberries in that quantity. I don't know. But that's communities should be free to choose their alternatives from that menu. And today it doesn't happen because we are constrained by the income equation. We don't have enough income. We have to do this. We have to make it. We have to sell it. We have to get it out there, get it done, yada, yada. Because we haven't been able to earn enough in the past to provide enough cushion to choose a different crop, a different, when we rotate a crop on a field, we used to provide for a fallow year. And the idea was that by resting the soil, the nutrition is reinvigorated and the next crop is better, or we produce more. So the stuff that farmers do in stewarding their land intentionally and without interference is to produce more using less. That's what farmers do and stewards do if they're good stewards. When you put money in charge like we have, by running the parity ratio down to 31 cents on the dollar, all of that is removed. You don't have time to be a good steward. You have to keep your soil in production, full production, 100% of the time, every year, or you're sucking wind so bad that your bank will process your butt through bankruptcy. Unless you're a favorite of the bankers. So, it takes all kinds of things out of consideration instead of putting it on the choice menu. There's something else I was going to say, but it's
Transcendental.
fair treatment, fair regard, treating my neighbor, loving my neighbor as myself, is kind of what we're really trying to figure out how to do here. That's what this is about for me. I have to learn how to do that and keep my country doing it. And keep my country doing it to all the people that we deal with outside the border as well as inside. This is what I want to get done. So to me, that's the parity program that needs to be brought forward and put on the table.
I think your question is part sociology and economics. It really is. And there is a sociological that all of this has had in the workforce. As an example, an anecdotal example, my youngest son works for a Norwegian oil exploration company. He has for 9 years. They go all over the world. They're an unusual company. An American should study how they run it. But he's been in shipyards, they're oceanic. He's been in shipyards all over the world, and also with the people that are stewards on the ships, the cooks that clean and stuff, and because they're out a long time. He's usually on a 5-month shift, or 5 weeks, excuse me, 5 weeks on, 5 weeks off. So in every shipyard, he's in Osaka now, or will be next week, and in Singapore, and in other places in Indonesia. The only people that get work done are Filipinos. It's the only people they can find with a work ethic that does the work. And he says, just amazing to watch. They don't complain. He said they have figured out they get paid, they'll work. And other people, he said, it's just amazing. Same way with cooks on the ship. And he said, it's amazing how they respond to being treated well, because they're used to being treated like dirt. Right. It's just, so there's a sociological impact on all the stuff we're talking about. Our society that's not working well because we're cheating. We're not paying enough to people. The mystery of what you described with the $20 in some fruit place in California, that's not unusual. That happens all over. There's just not enough American kids that are willing to work. They haven't had to for some reason. I think it's the consequence of too many years of running an economy that doesn't work right. That's what it looks like to me. It's dysfunctional. I can't explain that. I think it would cure itself if we started, running a par economy over time. I think all these things that have happened that are bad would start to reverse themselves. I don't think you can pass laws to fix all of it. Although an appropriate, first time in American history, appropriate minimum wage law would help. We have never had a mathematical minimum wage. It's always been political. Who in the hell thinks $7.25 is rational? Why not $7.42? This is absurd. It's a political number. It's not an economic or mathematical number. So if we run things that way, we don't get a good result. But the question you're asking is really good. My grandson lives in Utah, and they have a lavender farm next door to him that produces lavender for all over the world. And he went to work on it, chopping weeds one summer when he was a senior. And he was complaining. He couldn't keep up with the 2 guys that were in the same row with him. This is in central Utah. This is polygamy coming. Really deep. Oh my God. The 2 guys that were hoeing lavender ahead of him, one was 88 and the other was 90, and he could not keep up with them. And he was embarrassed because they work hard and don't complain.
Were they Mexican?
Yeah, Hispanics, yeah. Been there in that area for over 100 years, and they were still regarded as inferior.
It's 3:10. We're going to have a speaker coming on at 3:30. How about if we'll have Howard gets a last question, but then the panelists or any last thoughts, and then we'll have a comfort break. But I'm going to give it to Howard, who had a. Do you want to go first, or?
Hi. Tom, you were talking about having steel go preferentially from China rather than the United States companies and that sort of thing. And I think I can answer, and in other such related issues. I was an export-import from the late 1980s through early 2000s, and spent 7 or 8 months in China, back and forth, and Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and so forth. And during that time, I learned some very interesting things. The people that are the Chinese government, the way that Chinese do, and probably people, if other people do the business over there too, have understanding too, is very lenient towards joint ventures and sole ventures in China. You can set up a sole venture in China, open up your bank account in Dalian or Yingkou or Beijing or whatever have you, and do whatever you want over there. And you have special import-export privileges and this and that and the other. Joint venture, you can do joint ventures with a Chinese company. They'll supply the funds, or if you have the funds, like Motorola was moving in at the time I was in McDonald's and so forth. They set up joint ventures and that sort of thing, either government or private party joint ventures, and and I got offers, a zillion offers from different operations to go and different people in the government, out of the government, but the people in the government were thinking privately. They were thinking of themselves. They wanted to set up their own private operation. At any rate, when Nixon opened up the China to trade, just like the North American Free Trade Act did that into Central and Mexico and Central America, South America, and so forth. The gates were opened, and the people who came over there to do joint ventures and sole ventures were people who did not salute the American flag. They didn't care if they saluted the American flag, the Chinese flag. They didn't care, and so the people, and they made profit. If they made more profit by setting up a sole venture in China, or joint venture in China, or a joint venture with a Chinese company, a Chinese government company, or a triple, then they would go and do that. And they didn't. It's not so much are we doing business with China, or are we giving the yield. The people who were over here before, maybe even U.S. Steel or Bethlehem Steel, are now over there doing the business, and they're just making the profit themselves. And of course, the bankers are all part of that as well. Second thing is that when NAFTA opened up, of course, Mexico and so forth to no tariffs and that sort of thing, it encouraged people who had companies over here to close those companies over here, or at least to close their manufacturing operation over here and open it up over there. I'll give you one example on that, and I'll turn it back to you guys. But there's one ladder company. I'll give you the name. It's Werner Ladder in Chicago. And Werner Ladder, I happen to know people. I knew the union steward at Werner Ladder Company, and they had no idea that Werner Ladder Company was opening up a branch in Mexico City. They went and opened up the branch in Mexico City, and manufacturing and so forth. Later on, the woman's husband got an offer from. They have different last names. She kept her maiden name, and he got an offer over there. Hey, how don't you come over here? And that's how she learned that there was a Werner company. They bankrupted the company over here, and brought it over there. And I'm sure there's
Common.
many. They don't salute the American flag. They don't care. What do you think?
Well, I think it's absolutely true. I'll give you an anecdote again of my experience with that, with my U.S. Senator, who was a Dartmouth grad. He's no longer senator, he retired with a lot of money. We've had this conversation in his office numerous times, and he would just get heated, take his coat off, and shake his finger at me. You don't understand. We go through all this. And one day we were sitting and he said, we know all this stuff, Tom. The game is, I don't want to be in town when the shit hits the fan. That's the quote. So they know more than they're telling us about the economy, and the reason is what you just described, American greed that is not controlled. And you can't pass a law to completely control. I've suggested to that senator and others, American capital, the money you make here, don't tax it so much. You want to take it offshore, tax it 90%. Every dime. Go to China and we'll use their money. But the money you earn here stays in America. Does that sound nationalist again? No, I think that's good business for America. And to stop Werner from making ladders in Mexico and bringing them back here. That's unpatriotic. Besides bad economics. No, it's not how you run a country. And I think isn't it commonplace?
That's what,
Tremendous.
that's what Adam Smith said. He said, you know, a free trading country is a capital exporting country. And it can't be tolerated.
Well, does it work for long?
Right? I just wanted to read a little poem here. The reason this book is called Unforgiven.
Oh.
Why is it called Unforgiven?
You have never forgiven the bankers.
So, Chuck Walters read a poem that he thought was indicative of the feeling he was trying to portray or describe. That's correct. The poem was written by Tommaso Campanella, which was, you know, back in the, what, 1650s, 1560s?
Right.
Yeah, that 550 years ago, yes. The people is a beast of muddy brain that knows not its own force and therefore stands loaded with wood and stone. The powerless hands of a mere child guide it with bit and rein. One kick would be enough to break the chain, but the beast fears. And what the child demands, it does, nor its own terror understands, confused and stupefied by bugbear's fame. Most wonderful, with its own hands it ties and gags itself, gives itself death and war for pence doled out by kings from its own stores. Its own are all things between earth and heaven, but this it knows not. And if one arise to tell this truth, it kills him, unforgiven. Well, thank you kindly for all your tolerance, questions, participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Extraordinary panel. And now please help yourselves to coffee. There should be some fresh coffee coming in soon. But, and there's muffins and stuff still to be used up in this hot water tea.